Hello and welcome to Bitcoinlens episode 20. Before I jump into all the exciting Bitcoin news this week, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and just tell all your family and friends to follow this podcast. It really helps everyone and it'll help me as well. So let's jump right into this. So first of all, I wanted to go over MicroStrategy. So MicroStrategy, they're pretty much in the news every week, and this week is no different since they added another additional 55,000 Bitcoin to their Bitcoin piggy bank. And this puts them now pretty close to, if my math's correct, pretty close to 2% of the total Bitcoin supply. Puts them at roughly 1.8%, 1.86%, something like that. And their total tally now of Bitcoin is now jumped to 386,000, almost 387,000 Bitcoin. So Michael Saylor still keeps stacking there for MicroStrategy. And really, if you look at MicroStrategy right now, they're supposed to be a technology company, but I mean, the more you analyze them, the more you look at them, the more this is just becoming a Bitcoin company, honestly, with the convertibles and all that stuff, and just accruing Bitcoin and converting into Bitcoin. It's really something impressive they're doing, and their playbook obviously is working since they're beating pretty much everything on the stock market. But to stay on the Saylor topic here, he presented to Microsoft this week. So I know I mentioned Microsoft's got a vote. I believe it's December 9th. They got a vote on whether they want to convert a lot of their reserves into Bitcoin. And he actually presented to the board of directors as well as Satya Nadella, the CEO there. And I kind of went through it. It's just a 3-minute presentation. I highly recommend you look at it. And I can link it in the notes here. But the major focus here was just really going over where Bitcoin came from and the different levels, the different stages, and where we're going, and where a company like Microsoft could be going if they adopt a good percentage into Bitcoin. He also talked about, the comparisons of using past financial corporate strategies versus Bitcoin, like MicroStrategy has done. So I'm pretty convinced that Microsoft will probably be a very overwhelming yes on adopting Bitcoin, but we'll wait and see. That's just less than a week now, or just about a week away now. So we'll see what Microsoft decides to do. Also, on some of the corporation side, so I saw Chinese company Boyaa, they're a gaming giant in China, and they basically, I read this week they converted their Ethereum to Bitcoin. So this will essentially now mean that they've just overtaken MetaPlanet, which is another big company in Japan, and this will put them as Asia's largest corporate company and Bitcoin holder. So, largest Bitcoin holder in Asia now for Chinese gaming giant Boyaa. So, just to kind of give you a little specific there, they ended up converting $49 million worth of Ethereum into Bitcoin. So, that game theory kicking nicely there, and it's nice to see that competition over in Asia there between corporations. I also saw on the US side, so we know Bitwise they already have a US Bitcoin ETF, but I saw they filed this week for a 10 crypto index ETF. So more inflows there into Bitcoin, because this is going to be a combination of 10 cryptos, but Bitcoin obviously included there since that's kind of the OG. But there were some others in there like XRP, Solana, Cardano. But just all that means just more inflow as well, more inflow there for Bitcoin and price action there, because they'll obviously have to back that on the back end. Bitwise will. So some good, interesting stuff there from Bitwise. Nice to see that. I anticipate way more creative ETFs and index ETFs coming out from various companies. But as long as you have Bitcoin within that ETF, I think it's probably gonna be fair game, and it's probably gonna do pretty well compared to most things. Moving on to nation, states, and province news. So I saw this week there's some rumors. So I can't confirm this one, but the patterns do align with this one. So word on the street is Saudi Arabia and some of the Middle Eastern petrostates are actually acquiring Bitcoin. So some Bitcoiners are speculating that some of the Gulf oil money could be behind some of the record-breaking rallies we've seen lately. and some of these Middle Eastern states like Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar may be buying Bitcoin at a sovereign level, is what they believe. And it kind of lines up because, some of the speculators, you're also saying that, they may announce these purchases in a few weeks at the Abu Dhabi Bitcoin conference. And that's hosted by Bitcoin Inc. That's the same company that hosted the Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville. And this is going to be big. This is December 9th and 10th, and that's hosted in Abu Dhabi, UAE. So we'll see what happens, but I reckon this rumor is going to be accurate. We'll see, and let's not confirm this yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing this and on a major level as well. And to kind of just jump back to what I was talking about last week, I believe companies and these nation states are going to continue front running Trump before he can officially declare it, announce it, and put it into legal action there. So interesting stuff there from Saudi Arabia. So I also saw on the Swiss side, they're actually looking at adopting strategic Bitcoin reserve. So I saw some Swiss lawmakers. They declared that Switzerland needs a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and they're saying basically the time window is going to need to be a little quicker to kind of front run the USA and BRICS, as kind of that time window is closing up quickly on us. And this was according to the Satoshi Act Fund, which I've told you they've been orange pilling nations, states, and provinces around the world, doing some great work. I also saw some, this is confirmed news as well from Dennis Porter at Satoshi Act. He said he spoke to a lawmaker in Switzerland, and they confirmed that they have officially passed legislation to study Bitcoin mining with a sweeping majority of votes. So Switzerland looks like they're pretty much on top of it, and they know what they're doing, and they're going all in Bitcoin. It sounds like, from based on some of these patterns I'm seeing. I also saw on the Russia side, moving a little bit to Eastern Europe. So Russia, they announced this week no tax on Bitcoin crypto. So Putin, he officially signed into law regulating Bitcoin and crypto as property and exempting transactions from VAT, so that value added tax on those transactions, zero tax, zero VAT on any Bitcoin or crypto transactions. So Russia looks like they're pretty smart on this right now. I also saw similarly, a little bit tied to this as well, I saw North Korea and Russia. Can't confirm this one, but this is also something that I'm seeing gain some momentum here. And I'm seeing world leaders Kim Jong Un and Vladimir Putin. They've requested meetings with the Trump admin to reopen some of the trade deals. I've seen this reported in multiple places, so that's probably pretty true, since I've seen this pretty widely reported. But they're talking about potentially using Bitcoin instead of the U.S. dollar. So we'll see about that. I'm not 100% sure on that second piece, but just the fact that they're opening trade with the U.S., that is pretty good news. But Bitcoin will be a major bonus there if they could do that. And we'll see where that goes. I know Trump really came out strong this week, talking about BRICS better not adopt their own world reserve currency, and they better stay on the U.S. dollar, and kind of threatening them with tariffs. But we'll see where that goes. But either way, I think this is some promising news here, even if this is just half true. So going on to Vancouver, I saw this week Vancouver in Canada. The Vancouver's mayor, Ken Sim, proposes adding Bitcoin to the city's balance sheet. So this was seen during a city council meeting on November 26th, a little bit earlier this week. And Ken Sim submitted his notice of motion, where he plans to introduce his proposed Bitcoin bill on December 11th. So the city's proposal is titled "Preserving the City's Purchasing Power Through Diversification of Financial Resources," and essentially just becoming a Bitcoin friendly city. So the aim of this proposal is it is aiming to integrate Bitcoin into the city's financial system and make Vancouver a Bitcoin friendly city. And they also state there that they're trying to use Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation, as well as promoting economic development. So nice to see Vancouver, Canada, some really interesting stuff there. I've had some interesting interviews with some of the Canadian folks on this podcast. definitely check out the one with nuclear Bitcoin, a really interesting one, looking from the nuclear perspective. But great to see Canada on the forefront of this year. So moving on to Morocco. So I saw Morocco, crypto's kind of been a big no-no in Morocco, kind of moving to the Africa side, and they've now finally legalized it after a 7-year ban. So the governor of Bank El Maghrib has announced Morocco's plan to regulate crypto assets and essentially lifting a ban which has been in place since 2017. Now, Morocco's central bank has already drafted a law which could regulate and legalize crypto assets. So great to see Morocco there on kind of on the front end of African crypto adoption. Really nice to see. As well as Brazil, I saw Brazil introduced a Bitcoin strategic reserve bill this week as well. So Eros Biondini on Monday proposed establishing a Bitcoin sovereign strategic reserve known as RESBIT. And this plan basically calls for the country's central bank to gradually acquire Bitcoin until it makes up 5% of their national reserves. And this is according to some of the local reports there. So Eros Biondini, if you're not familiar with him, he's a member of the Chamber of Deputies in Brazil. Good stuff there from Brazil. Let's see how that goes, but that's promising. Also, guys, I'm talking about the game theory every week, and this I'm basically just going over the game theory kicking in, and this is every week now that we're getting updates on this stuff. Hong Kong has got another update. So Hong Kong, they plan to exempt private equity funds, hedge funds, and high net worth individuals from capital gains tax on. And this is on Bitcoin and just crypto, any other crypto as well. So super pro Bitcoin there as well from Hong Kong. I saw Nayib Bukele in El Salvador. I feel like we touched on him quite a bit, but Nayib Bukele suggested this week a rent a volcano program after they now have mined 474 Bitcoin with geothermal energy from their volcanoes. And they've got Volcano City, of course, there in El Salvador. And this is pretty cool. So you're essentially just buying. You can essentially you can put some money into some volcano or geothermal mining and essentially rent out some of that mining there from that energy produced from these volcanoes. So pretty creative there from Nayib Bukele. And that's a pretty cool thing if you want to invest in something. I mean, for me, I personally recommend just sticking with Bitcoin. But if you wanted to if you're gonna want to get your feet wet a little bit in mining, that's a pretty cool, neat way to do it as well. Get into the geothermal mining space. Now, going to price action. So, Bitcoin price action. So, we saw in October, just a little flashback here, 10.91% in October. In November, we saw Bitcoin rose 37%. What are we going to see in December? This is kind of crazy. Bitcoin rose 37% in the election month there. And then already up 146% in this year. So, that is pretty crazy. I saw an interesting tweet this week posted on X by John Erlington. Really interesting one. He said he basically had a comparison there. If you invested $5,000 that are now worth $1 million, how many years ago would that have to have been? So if you look at Disney, you would have had to do that about 50 years ago. $5,000 50 years ago would be $1 million now. You look at Nike 37 years ago. You look at Amazon 22 years ago. Tesla 14 years ago. And Bitcoin 9 years ago. So Bitcoin killing absolutely everything. Magnificent 7, S&P 500, index funds, real estate. It's killing absolutely everything. I also saw another little interesting tidbit there is Bitcoin also overtook the market cap of the Canadian dollar this week. That's pretty crazy. I mean, you're literally taking over nation currency there as far as market cap. So some interesting observations I observed this week, some interesting facts there. I saw $80 billion in gold was discovered this week in China. Now, this was the world's largest gold deposit found. So there was about 1,000 metric tons. And this was found in central China, according to state media. So, kind of the moral of the story there. I know I've had a Bitcoin versus gold podcast episode, but like I said, they predict like we've had about 55% of the total supply of gold mined. But how on earth do you truly know that? And gold is not a finite, it's not a finite commodity. And, it's 2024, and we've just dug out the world's largest gold deposit in central China. So really just eye-opening to see how gold, the total cap of gold just keeps expanding every year as they find more and as the technologies get better to find more gold. Now, another interesting fact I saw 11 years ago. This is pretty crazy, guys. 11 years ago, the first Wall Street research report on Bitcoin was released. And you wouldn't believe the price they forecasted Bitcoin would be in 2024. They predicted Bitcoin will be $100,000 in 2024. So we got to give a round of applause there to Wall Street for calling that one. That was the first report on Bitcoin on Wall Street. And that was published by Wedbush during one of their financial equity research reports. I just thought that was pretty crazy. And Wall Street now, to be fair to Wall Street, I mean, they did bash Bitcoin for a very long time. But man, oh man, are they all in right now with all these ETFs? You've seen the different crypto ETFs now, index funds. Unbelievable. As well as, like I said last week, BlackRock with now their own Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Fund. I'll leave you with a few interesting quotes here and a few interesting flashbacks here. Saifuddin Ammus. If you haven't read the Bitcoin Standard or the Fiat Standard, highly recommend it. Probably two of my favorite Bitcoin related books, just to learn about Bitcoin and fiat and how currencies have kind of evolved, since the very, very early days, all the way back to the Romans and the Egyptians and all that. So, but I quote, if a Bitcoin is worth $200,000, do not sell it and buy dollars. Because if Bitcoin is at $200,000, the dollar is very close to its grave. So essentially, he's saying if we're hitting $200,000 in Bitcoin, the inflation on dollars probably going to be pretty high and probably close to losing its battle as the global reserve currency. Now, we'll disagree a little bit that Bitcoin is not completely just tied to inflation. Inflation certainly ups the price of Bitcoin, but I don't think that's going to be the only reason why Bitcoin hits 200,000. If you look at the current adoption that I go through every single week, nation, corporations, etc., it's not just going to be inflation. It's just going to be pure adoption. Remember, we have 21 million Bitcoin. If the demand is super high, the price will go up. Simple economics. I also saw an interesting one, and I'll leave you all with this. I saw Ryan Serhant in New York City. He's a big realtor there. He's got his own show on Netflix as well. So a flashback of him actually doing a real estate deal, and someone received a 50,000 Bitcoin dollar offer worth 13 million for their property, and this was in 2015. The seller declined this offer, and today's value of that Bitcoin would be $4.8 billion. So enjoy that one, and that is pretty crazy. Like I said, guys, keep stacking. I mean, don't get flustered by the price of Bitcoin. I know it's a big watermelon right now, but I'd rather have a small chunk of a very, very fast-growing major watermelon than a pretty much stagnant, tiny little grape. So keep stacking, guys. Hope you enjoyed this week. That's all I have for this week. Those are the main updates. I'll catch you all next week. Have a great week. See you later.